Hold on, let me shoot for the start.
Okay. Okay.
Because if they take aggro to me,
Yeah.
he is a cuck. No, you're good, man.
Oh shit. If the Lovebirds organize this invasion, we need to be prepared.
Alright, overcharged.
Rumor is they have access to Ceska. Not sure if Omni made them honorary agents or if they have another fairy godmother, but it's starting to make sense why our first team was overrun so quickly.
Let's go.
So I've been wanting to make a Lovebirds guide for quite a while now. The vast majority of guides out there are rushed, quickly made videos from just when the Incursion was released, made by clickbait YouTubers that I don't have a whole lot of respect for, after they've just done a very small handful of runs. So this video and this guide is done from the point of view of someone who's done hundreds of runs, the vast majority of them teaching new players their first time through. And that goes for any experience level, any SHD level. If we can do this with one DPS player, I believe anyone can do this with 3 DPS players and a single healer. So it's just the key things to focus on in this fight that I'm going to show in these upcoming clips. Focus on those key things and you've all got this. So we're going to start taking a look at the DPS perspective first. So we're going to run right in, and when we're in the center room, this is where we would drop our decoy to get Johnson's aggro. We're going to run right up to Martinez and build up our striker stacks with an ACS 12. We're going to swap to our main weapon once we're at full stacks and deal 1 bar of damage to Martinez. So when we deal 1 bar of damage to Martinez, that's going to cause the drone from Johnson to swap, and in that swap we can kill the drone and go underneath the arches to protect ourselves from the turret. The healer is going to overcharge, and we're going to deploy our booster hive and pulse and our grenade for bloody knuckles. As soon as we see Johnson, we're focusing all our damage on Johnson because we're trying to get Johnson to less than 4 bars of health remaining to force spawn the healing station. As soon as the healing station appears, we destroy that and swap all our damage to Martinez now. We're trying to get Martinez at the same point of 4 bars of health remaining, and then we're going to swap back to Johnson. Focus all our damage on Johnson to kill Johnson. Once Johnson is dead, we swap all our damage back to Martinez and kill Martinez. Finish off Martinez, and that's the fight. So I wanted to show an example of what happens when you don't get Johnson down to less than 4 bars of health remaining before he gets the drone back up. So here's just a clip of one of the attempts we were doing. We didn't get this on the first try. Where basically I kind of get confused by Martinez, put the decoy in a weird spot, and just get behind on DPS. So Johnson is going to fill that wrench symbol above his head to full before I get him down to less than 4 bars of health remaining, which is going to cause him to spawn the drone. So now that that drone has spawned, they are now immune from damage, and we would simply just wipe and reset. I just want to point out how close this was to getting that extra chunk of time from getting Johnson down below 4 bars of health, and that's why focusing damage on Johnson is absolutely key. So if you ever get in this situation where you end up getting the drone to come back and Johnson is just over 4 bars of health, just keep in mind and just remind your team, hey, we were actually very close to getting this done. It's even though there's so much of their health bar currently left when the drone comes back, we were actually very, very close on this attempt. So now for the healing role. This is the role that really has more going on than the DPS players. Their primary job is keeping Sledgehammer up, as well as other buffs, and just the occasional chem heal at your feet. So starting out by throwing up the repair station right by where the DPS players are going to be shooting Martinez to keep them safe, and then wait for them to destroy the drone. Once the drone is dead, go underneath the arches and overcharge. That's going to let them use their overcharge skills, and now your primary job is keeping Sledgehammer active. So the key thing I want everyone to pay attention to is how well Solus times these grenades. So the Sledgehammer buff does not reactivate if it is currently active. So the goal is to toss a grenade while Sledgehammer is active, Sledgehammer deactivates, and the grenade explodes. So right there, that's literally as perfect of a timing that you could possibly do. And really at that point, it's just the occasional chem heal. Drop the heal hive at your feet so that you have Technician Faraday for everyone and you don't get EMP pulse by Martinez. And that's it. That's the fight. Alright, so now that we've talked about what we're doing, let's get into the builds. So, I want to start off by saying the builds are potentially optional. It's just a matter of efficiency. And the more damage you put out, the more leeway your group as a whole has for things going wrong, for carrying less well-equipped groups, that sort of thing. So, generally speaking, most people will run Coyote's Mask on Strikers, and in most situations, Bloody Knuckles is generally seen as a weak and poor exotic. But on this fight, Bloody Knuckles is very key, because we're getting this 25%, this says weapon damage, it's actually total weapon damage, which is essentially just a 25% straight increase in damage because we have no other sources of total weapon damage. So as our exotic choice, Bloody Knuckles is very, very strong here. We're going with the 4-piece Strikers with the chest and backpack rolled with crit, and then the last piece, Ceska. This can technically be a few different things. Without going too deep, Ceska is what I would recommend for the vast majority of people, vast majority of situations, and vast majority of weapons. As our shotgun, we want some version of the ACS-12. So this can either just be a standard high-end version. The lefty, though, even though you're a DPS player and you're assuming the healer is going to be doing the sledgehammer, it helps to have a sledgehammer of your own when we proc our Bloody Knuckles, so that synergizes. The lefty also has an extra 5% rate of fire, so you just get your stacks a little bit quicker. So lefty is kind of ideal for this fight. Your weapon, primary weapon, can really be anything. The Ouroboros is kind of the top option. We're at close range, it's very accurate at that range, and it does an absolutely ridiculous amount of damage. You'll notice in the single DPS video, we're using Scorpio, and that's honestly primary because that 7th shot buff, when we're getting this 7th shot, this 20% amplified damage, this is a huge amount of damage and essentially puts it on par with the Ouroboros. So having one Scorpio in your group is actually very handy, especially if it's someone who's a bit newer and doesn't have the Ouroboros. So if you have one Scorpio and 2 Ouroboros, that'd be incredible. It can honestly be anything, though. Any high-end weapon that's solid and you prefer, San Elmo's is fine, high-end SMGs are fine, LMGs are fine. You do have a lot of flexibility with this, but there are some optimal options. For skills, the Striker Shield, which is the firewall specialization skill, is the single most underrated skill potentially in the game. This bonus damage per enemy is absolutely key because we at least have the 2 bosses, so essentially this can also be up to 11%, so potentially 22%, in this case 20% damage from the bosses. I'm not 100% sure about this, but I believe the shock traps from Johnson also are done per enemy, count as that per enemy bonus. So any shock traps in your area of effect from the Striker Shield count for that. The Firewall spec, because we have to have that on for Firewall for the Striker Shield, we're also giving all of our teammates 10% amplified damage to the bosses because we're going to be within 10 meters of them. So this bonus does not apply to us, which then means we can have 2 Firewalls, 2 Striker Shields. Everyone gets this 10% damage amp. Ideally, you would have, in a perfect situation, 2 Firewalls at least, and 1 demo for the 5% damage out of cover. The other skills we want, the decoy, dropping that in the center of the fight gets Johnson's aggro at the very start. That's just nice so that Johnson doesn't fuck with us as we're doing that initial bar of damage to Martinez. It doesn't hit us with shock ammo or rockets, which is really annoying and can kind of screw up the start of the fight. The booster hive is very key. Getting this, it's drastically increased reload speed. The spray from, say, the Scorpio is much narrower, so we're going to hit all our shots, and it makes it much easier to hit headshots as well. This also gives us hazard protection, which protects us from Martinez's fire. So we can just sit in the fire with this, and we're not going to lose our accuracy or anything like that because of that overcharge booster hive. The key thing about this, though, drop it once the healer overcharges so that we get 32 charges, the max amount of charges, instead of this just base 8. The fourth skill, and this can honestly be either the regular scanner or the remote pulse. Having one of these two, they do not stack, but having one of those two, this is just an extra 15% amp. It's difficult to see here because it's grayed out. But this 15% amplified damage when the pulse is overcharged. So again, the healer is overcharging. While it's overcharged, the entire group gets an extra 15% damage on all their damage. So this isn't the most significant, but it is a good extra chunk, especially at the start of that fight. If we can have at least one of those 4 skills, that's going to be very, very beneficial to the group. Now, for the healer build. This is a fairly straightforward healer build. 4-piece future initiative with the chest, BCSU gloves for the overcharge, the setup, or just a backpack with opportunistic to apply this buff for our group. We're going to apply that with the lefty, as well as I showed in the healing clip. This is our primary job, is keeping this perfect sledgehammer active as much as possible. This buff, this 40% damage, is just a straight up amp to all our group doing all that damage. Keeping this up is absolutely key. So we're just using the basic Reinforcer Chem Launcher and Restore Hive for our skills. Technically I've got the Scorpio on, but I'm really not using that because I'm just focusing on the lefty. And then as our specialization, generally speaking, most healing builds will often run Survivalist. Normally Survivalist offers a lot of very good things. You got the Fire Grenade, which is very good. The Outgoing Healing, very strong. There are, generally speaking, good reasons to run Survivalist on a healer, but primarily for the Incursion, we honestly don't even care about this 10% skill healing. It is the Faraday field. If the fight goes on long enough, in the rushing phase, Martinez will occasionally throw an EMP grenade. So we're using the Faraday field, which our Restorer Hive is going to be within 5 meters. We're just dropping it at our feet. That's going to make us immune to that EMP grenade, which is going to keep our skills active and just everything safe, keep us useful. So that is everything we need to know for the Russian strat on Lovebirds. It might be a lot at the start, but it really is just as simple as focus Johnson, then focus Martinez, then focus Johnson, then focus Martinez. I really recommend teaching this to new players, because once you get it down, it's really not that difficult. It's much quicker, it's more straightforward, it's much simpler, and it's frankly just easier than the gate strategy. If we teach new players this method, then they will teach the next people, and so on and so forth. If we just talk down and assume that because it's someone's first time through, they can't do a certain strategy that's easier and quicker, and you teach them something else that's a week 1 strat taught by clickbait YouTubers, one of those two things is going to be spread. Teach people the right way. Don't talk down to them assuming that they can't do it. This strategy really can be done by anyone. It's not a matter of lacking damage. I can't stress that enough. We've done this with 4 people running 6-piece 511 builds. We've done it with high-end builds. We've done it with 6 yellow core strikers where we were using regular weapons and not even the capacitor, so the yellow cores were completely useless. It doesn't matter what you're using, you can still do it. If you use the right gear and the right setups, this strategy is very, very, very easy and very, very quick. So please just take that forward and trust in yourself and trust in others that you can do this. Forget the gate strategy. It's just a waste of time. It's just frustrating mess. So with that, thank you for watching, and I hope to see you out there.